muscular system. We have three types of muscle fibers: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle. Skeletal muscle is striated in its appearance with light and dark bands. Striated is another way of saying it appears striped. This muscle attaches to the skeletal system and is under voluntary control, which means you have conscious awareness and choice of its contraction. The cardiac muscle is found in the heart wall. It is also striated in its appearance, but is under involuntary control. This means it will remember to contract whether you think about it or not. Our smooth muscle is found in hollow organ walls, such as the stomach and uterus. It is non-striated in its appearance and is under involuntary control. The muscles serve several functions in the body. They are used for movement of the skeletal system and also moving substances in the body. The cardiac muscle moves blood through the body. The smooth muscle moves food through the digestive system through peristalsis, and our skeletal system, or our skeletal muscle, even assists with the flow of blood and lymph in the body. Muscles help to hold things in position and to control the volume of certain organs through the use of ring-shaped sphincter muscles. Muscles generate heat when they are used as a byproduct of the metabolism. This is the purpose of shivering. A muscle is considered a prime mover when it generates the majority of force. For example, when you bend at the elbow to lift your forearm, the biceps muscle is a prime mover. It can also be considered an agonist because it is the muscle causing a movement. The antagonist will oppose the movement of the agonist. In this example, the triceps would be considered the antagonist opposing flexion of the biceps. A synergist will assist and support a prime mover in its action. To efficiently flex the biceps and the forearm, it is necessary for the synergist, like the shoulder and pectoral muscles, to stabilize the upper arm while moving the forearm. Depending on what motion you are looking at, a muscle could be considered an agonist in one direction and an antagonist in the other direction, and a synergist in yet another motion. In general, the terms prime mover and synergist tend to be used together, and agonist and antagonist tend to be used together. Our skeletal muscles are grouped together in areas where multiple muscles will work together. Some examples are the quadriceps group, the biceps group, and the triceps group. These are held together by a membrane called the fascia or deep fascia. The individual muscle cells are called muscle fibers and are arranged parallel to each other. An individual muscle is surrounded by a membrane called the epimysium. Within the muscle there are bundles of muscle fibers called fascicles, and these bundles are surrounded by a membrane called the perimysium. Each of the muscle fibers are also surrounded by endomysium. At the ends of the muscle, we have tendons to attach them to bone. The tendon is composed of where the different membranes extend down past the ends of the muscles and adhere to each other. This same tissue will separate again and form the periosteum that surrounds the bone. This is an example of how the body will have one continuous tissue change names depending on which tissue it is and where it is located. The tendon that you can see here is actually so strong, and when it continues to form the periosteum around the bone, that in the case when a muscle tears from the bone, you will actually tear off part of the bone in most cases, rather than actually tearing the tendon. This is what happens in an avulsion fracture. The parts of the muscle cells have slightly different names. The sarcolemma is the special name for the plasma membrane around a muscle fiber. The T-tubules or transverse tubules are continuous with the sarcolemma and form connections between the muscle fibers. The muscle fibers are sometimes referred to as muscle cells. The two terms are used interchangeably. The sarcoplasm refers to the muscle cell cytoplasm. Inside the muscle cells, we have a sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is a membrane network similar to the endoplasmic reticulum used to store calcium for muscle contraction. Muscle cells will have a pigment similar to hemoglobin called myoglobin that is used for carrying oxygen. This is an illustration of the muscle tissue. You may want to save this picture or print it out to refer to in the next section, as well as with the previous slide. The muscle cells are composed of different fibers. The myofibrils refer to the protein filaments which run the length of the muscle fibers but are not continuous as an individual fiber. The thin filaments contain the protein filaments actin, troponin, and tropomyosin. The thick filaments contain the protein filament myosin. These will be arranged in repeating functional units of muscle called sarcomeres. Here we have an animation showing the structure of the muscle. In a muscle such as the deltoid is an organ of the muscular system. A muscle organ is composed mainly of skeletal muscle tissue, nerves, vascular, and other connective tissue components. Each muscle organ is wrapped by connective tissue called fascia. This wrapping may extend beyond the muscles as tough cords or tendons that attach to bones. The collagen fibers in the bone tissue and tendon interlace to form a strong attachment. Some muscles, such as the abdominal muscles, do not attach directly to bones via cord-like tendons. Rather, they insert into flat, band-like tendons called aponeuroses. The wrapping or fascia is also called the epimysium. Another layer of connective tissue, called the perimysium, extends inward to form bundles or fascicles that contain the muscle fibers or cells. So you've got the entire muscle organ here. That muscle is going to be surrounded by epimysium. You have the fascicles within. They're surrounded by perimysium. And you would have the groups of muscles surrounded by the fascia. Each muscle cell in the fascia is covered by another connective tissue layer called the endomysium. The connective tissue, therefore, is intimately involved with the organization of the muscle organ. Muscle fiber damage results in the connective tissue formation of scar tissue. So you've got the muscle fibers, and they're surrounded by endomysium. One end of a muscle is usually fastened to a relatively fixed part, the origin, while the other end is attached across the joint to a movable part, the insertion. When a muscle contracts, the insertion moves towards its origin. Skeletal muscles work in groups. The muscles producing the movement is called the prime mover or agonist. While the prime mover is contracting, other synergist muscles help by stabilizing some joints. Muscles that are antagonists to the prime mover, usually found on the opposite side with opposing functions from that of the prime mover, have to relax in order to produce the desired movement. For example, as a person climbs stairs, the flexors and extensors of the thigh have to take turns while the other joints are held stable to produce meaningful work.